so I was always fascinated in the origins of those, and always thought to myself, well, if we were eating those plants that had those parent molecules more, wouldn't that be a good strategy for preventing some of those diseases, staying on the healthy side? So when I was in Washington, D.C., I just got this random call from this company called Nu Skin, and I looked them up. That was right about the time that we got the Google search engine, 1996. And it sort of said there's a company like Amway. And I thought, I don't know anything about soap. So, but they were very persistent. They kept calling me back. And that's another thing that I learned about Nu Skin and its distributors and its HR department. They don't take no for an answer, right? No is not enough. Just keep going, right? So finally I came and visited Utah, and like John said, it's a beautiful place. But I was really super impressed. At the time, they had only 2 PhDs working for the company. So I'm the third guy that comes along, and I wanted to talk to those scientists, and I was super impressed with their approach. They actually had the scientific literature on the desk, and they seemed to be using that as a guide for their product development, which really impressed me. And I also obtained a promise from the founders of the company that, that as a scientist at Nu Skin, that I would never have to compromise my scientific values, that if marketing asked for something that was impossible, that scientists always had the power of veto. And that's how it's been. I've been now at Nu Skin for 23 years, and loved every minute of it. I love the culture there, and I really love the commitment that Nu Skin has to science. So, why would they ask a scientist to open the meeting? I know that most of you probably didn't like science in school, and I'm not here to give you a lecture in science, am I? Unless you want one. So, we are going to talk science because we're going to talk product development and innovation. But the real reason why I'm talking science, and I think why John wanted me to talk today, was not to teach you science, not that you have to learn genetics or biochemistry, but so that you can, from my words, hopefully gain an appreciation that Nu Skin does have a commitment to science, and that the products that you're using really work, that they have a firm foundation in science. You wouldn't want to hear anything else, would you? I'm just going to try and prove that to you today, okay? So, we're going to talk about what we do. This is, what is it called? The Science of Beauty Roadshow, right? So we're on the road. How it came. Science of Beauty. And we're talking about the science of beauty, right? And that's the one thing that Nu Skin does really well. First, I'm going to talk about nutrition, and then I'm going to talk about the other side of beauty, which is personal care. But they're both beauty, aren't they? Yeah. In fact, you know, the company started in personal care alone. You remember that, right? 1984, right? Yes. So 1984 was all about personal care. Amazing sort of slogan, which was all of the good, none of the bad, right? The products really worked and people could really feel it. But after a few years, the founders, especially Blake Roney, who has a very curious sense of humor if you've ever met him, and he said, well, he noticed that even though we had the best personal care products in the world, some people still remained ugly. And what he meant by that was that even though we had these wonderful skin creams that were hydrating and had all these active ingredients, we had really good shampoos that would make your hair shiny, and we had, he still noticed that people had sometimes dull hair, not very good complexion, and not very good nails. And so he actually did some more research and figured out that no matter how good the stuff is that you put on your skin, if you're not healthy on the inside, if you have marginal deficiencies in nutrients, then your skin, your hair, your nails won't be as healthy as they could be. So that's when they launched a product called Image HNS. It stands for hair, nails, and skin. We still have that product, right? Do we have it in Australia? No. That's okay. It's one of our old legacy products. We've got some great science since then. But that was the concept. That was the first cosmeceutical product that I've ever heard of, where the company put nutrition and beauty and wellness on the inside and the outside. That's the science of beauty, isn't it? Yeah, it's incredible. And so then the company was born on the nutrition side. And does anyone remember what it was first called? Interior Design Nutritionals. There was interior design. So that's the other thing that I scratched my head when the headhunter called me, like, interior design nutritionals? I don't know anything about decorating houses either. But apparently it was the science of beauty from the inside out, right? So today we're going to talk about, what our goals are with science. We're going to talk about 3 secrets to healthy aging from the nutritional side. And then we're going to switch over a little bit and talk about skin and what Nu Skin is doing beyond just finding active ingredients to put in your skin, but actually sort of along the technology route, which then gives you a two-pronged approach to beauty from the outside as well. So, shall we get started? All right. Here is my friend Frank. How old do you think he is? From the photo.
92.
99, did you say?
92.
Come on, you're not being very nice to Frank, even though you're very close to the truth. Most people think he looks around 80, and in fact, if you met him, you would think that he was no more than 80, maybe even in his 70s. He spoke beautifully, and he also spoke Spanish and sang Spanish songs. The first time I ever saw him, he was riding a big motorcycle, and he sort of joined our biking group, and I said, "Hey, who's the new guy?" And they said, "Oh, that's Frank." I said, and they said, "Oh, and don't knock the way he's riding his bike. He's actually 90 years old." Like, wow, that's kind of old to be riding around Park City, right, in the mountains. And then I lost touch with Frank, and then he moved into my neighborhood 10 years later, and that's where I visited him there. And at that point, he was 100 years old. Yeah, so in that photo, he's 100 or 101. And in the place where he was living, it was assisted living, there were some other older ladies living there, actually much younger than him. So he had these girls that he was always flirting with. They were like in their 80s, right? So really, and really that's the model. He finally died when he was 104, and he was in good health his whole life, right? That night, on his 104th birthday, he told me he was feeling a little tired and he went to bed early, and that's the last time I saw Frank alive. That's really good health, right? That's kind of the model that I use for healthy aging, right? So, what are those 3 secrets to healthy aging? The first secret to healthy aging is nutrition science. Now, why am I saying nutrition science? You'd sort of think, well, that's kind of a weird connection, right? Good nutrition, really, does that help me to age well? Let me share with you why. What's going on here? This is like World War I or II. I think it's World War I. There's a big sign on the door that says triage. Do you know what triage is? Are there any nurses here? Yes, exactly. If you've got a hospital or something and it is being overwhelmed by too many patients, right? The resources are stretched. Then there's a nurse, a special nurse called a triage nurse, and she goes out and she quickly assesses each patient and divides them into 3 categories, right? Those that are just too severe and can't be helped, so those limited resources would be taking way too much time helping them. Those that really just don't have much wrong with them at all and they can wait, and then those that we can help right now to save their life. That's called triage, right? The body does triage. If you are marginally deficient in a certain nutrient, then the body has to make a decision what to do with that nutrient. And what do you think it does with that nutrient? It sends it to the most important system that is there to keep you alive today. So let me give you an example. What happens if you don't get enough calcium? It's one of the micronutrients. Not enough calcium, what happens? Yeah, straight away. Like I didn't get enough calcium yesterday and suddenly like my bones are... It takes some time, and often you don't notice until you're much older, right? The reason is because the body is diverting that calcium to systems that are very important to keep you alive today. And that would be the neuromuscular system. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that calcium is required to set up ion gradients so that we can have this whole sort of pulse of electricity sent down the nerves so that we can have muscle contraction and movement. And the same thing goes on with our brain to think. So, not enough calcium. If we didn't do triage in the body, we wouldn't be able to think or move. Imagine if the body got it wrong. So, I've got super dense bones, but I'm walking across the road, across Queen Street here, and suddenly I get a brain fart and think, where am I? And then my muscles seize up and I get run over by a bus. right? You can see that it's very important to be able to think and move today, right? And if you don't get enough calcium, it will be then at the expense of aging well. Do you get the picture? So we need to make sure that we don't compromise all of those micronutrients. Just get everything that we need every day, and you can have strong bones and be able to think and move today. And the story repeats for the other nutrients as well, right? Even the B vitamins and things like that are extremely important for not only energy production today, right? And that's where your body would send it. But without sufficient B vitamins, did you know that it's your genetic integrity that then suffers? We don't have enough for the enzymes that repair the DNA when it's damaged. That will lead to unhealthy aging. I could go on all night. It's such an interesting topic. So, do you believe that nutrition is important? And we have at Nu Skin the best, most scientifically formulated nutritional products that cover all those areas so that you'll be 100% in all those categories. All right, let's move on. That's the first secret of aging well. Foundational. What's the second one? Anyone have a guess what the second secret to healthy aging is? I know it's too hard, so I'll just tell you. It is free radical biology and antioxidant science, right? So we know that from pollution, right, we have these unstable chemical elements called free radicals that then attack certain vulnerable parts of the body, the cell membranes, the electron-dense parts, which are the cell membranes of the DNA. We don't want that damage because that ages us, right? So we need to protect ourselves with antioxidants. Right, what are the antioxidants? Can you name any? Vitamin C. I love vitamin C. It's a water-soluble antioxidant. It's very important, right? What's another one? Sorry? E. Okay, E is a lipid-soluble antioxidant. So it's one that sits in the membranes and the lipid parts of the cell and protects your body from free radicals there, right? And actually, C is a very good friend of E, because when E is oxidized, C can donate electrons and help it to be regenerated. So they work together. There's a whole list of them, right? And I'll show you the list. Oh, look at them all. Okay, vitamin E, vitamin C, carotenoids, we'll talk more about those later. Flavonoids, alpha-lipoic acid. This is interesting. Why do I have selenium, copper, zinc, and manganese there? Anyone know? Why do I call those antioxidants? Those are metals, right? Trace minerals, right? Selenium, copper, zinc. Well, it turns out that your body makes these little enzymes that are antioxidant enzymes. We call them endogenous antioxidant enzymes, right? So your body makes those. Your body gets instructions from the nucleus, the DNA, to manufacture, right? There's a translation that goes on. One of the genes will say, okay, here, make this like a little Pac-Man antioxidant. But guess what? The little antioxidant enzyme is born with no teeth. And without teeth, it can't fight free radicals. So what are the teeth for those endogenous antioxidants? These guys, selenium, copper, zinc, manganese. They are in the active site of that enzyme, and they help it to work. Did you know that most Australians, about 75%, are marginally deficient, for example, in zinc? So if you get enough, then your body's able to do what it needs to do, right? So that's why they're there. All right, so we need a formulation that has at least all of those things in daily values, right? And I think I already mentioned that. All right, carotenoids are a really cool antioxidant. Carotenoids are the colors found in nature, right? From our fruits and vegetables. Even the trees, actually. Not so much in the gum trees, you don't see them, but what about the other deciduous trees in the autumn time? What happens? The chlorophyll strips out of the leaves, and you see the true colors that were there the whole time. The oranges, the reds, the yellows, those are carotenoids. They help the plants to harvest energy from the sun, but they're also antioxidants. And our body needs those. Our body doesn't make them. We have to get them from nature. And it turns out that they're a first line of defense antioxidant. Very important. So, I should have been showing you the beautiful chemical structure of these molecules while I was talking. There they are, there's some of them. So lycopene is red. Do you know why lycopene is red?
It's in tomatoes.
Because it comes from tomatoes. Watermelon has lycopene too. It's this unusual chemical structure of every second bond is a double bond. Any chemists amongst us? Those are called conjugated double bonds. You remember that? sp2 hybrid orbitals? Yeah, they're wonderful because actually it's kind of deceiving how it's written on paper, but what this means is you get this undisturbed cloud of electrons around that area, and it buzzes, the electrons buzz up and down the length of that molecule, and the frequency of that buzzing gives it the color, right? So think electrons moving, giving you that red, the orange, the yellow, right? So lutein is yellow, beta-carotene, you know it is orange, right? All right, so a while ago, about 15 years ago, we got wind of some work that was being done at the at the University of Utah, where with sort of a combination of work done by the Moran Eye Institute and the Division of Biooptics, a bunch of really geeky physicists, they figured out how to use light to measure carotenoids. The reason they were interested is because carotenoids are used in the eye. Right? We have at the back of the eye and the macula these carotenoids, especially lutein and zeaxanthin, and that's these two here, right? And they actually protect the eye from blue light. Blue is the closest, right? You've got infrared, right? Heat, and then you've got red, and then all the colors of the rainbow through to violet. What's next? Ultraviolet. We know that ultraviolet is like the burning rays of the sun, right? Well, blue is very active, short wavelength radiation, damages the eye. Those protect the eye. And if you don't have sufficient of those, then you may end up with AMD, right? Leading cause of blindness amongst the elderly. So the scientists actually figured out how to use a low intensity laser light to measure carotenoids at the back of the eye. It's breakthrough science. When that was all published, the physicists kept fiddling. And they turned up the power of the laser and figured out that you can actually measure carotenoids in the skin. That's when they came to us and said, are you guys interested? And we had to think about it. Yeah, we're interested in that. Because if you can measure carotenoids, they're a biomarker of the entire antioxidant system. So long story short, we did that. We spent about $70 million and we developed the biophotonic scanner, right? Anyone here been scanned before? Biophotonic scanner? Anyone hasn't? Anyone here has not scanned? Okay, all right. We need to get you guys scanned, right? Because what does it tell you? Well, I've got an experiment here that we did here. We've got about 7 million scans, and you can see what the scans mean. So here is high. This means you've got lots of carotenoids in the skin. Here is low. It means you have very few carotenoids in the skin, right? So the average person who has less than 2 servings of fruits and vegetables a day scores around here, right? So if all you eat is potato chips and tomato sauce, you're probably going to scan around here, because that's 2 vegetables, right? 2 vegetables right there. Right? But you don't want to be average, do you? This is where the average person scores, right? Now if you take 6 servings of fruits and vegetables, you're going to get higher up on the scale. If you take 10 servings of fruits and vegetables, you're going to be more like around here. And we actually designed LifePack to provide those same levels of carotenoids and the same ratios that you would find from 10 servings of fruits and vegetables, right? So you can do better. And a lot of our distributors end up around here. Anyone here in the blue zone or the platinum zone? Someone in the front? If I had a carrot or something here, I'd give you all a reward. That's awesome. Right? People who are really serious about their nutrition are up here. Now, if you smoke, every cigarette has 10 quadrillion free radicals. What's that going to do to your carotenoid score? It's going to drop it. We often find that people who smoke, well, I think we're being kind of generous there. They often end up down here, right? So don't smoke. And what I love about this science is that when people are scanned, suddenly they're very competitive. They suddenly have a roadmap to their health, right? It's a very motivating thing. So we've really excelled in this area, the second area of aging well, right? Being able to measure your antioxidant level is just terrific for helping people to age better, because they usually then decide, oh, I'm going to start eating fruits and vegetables. All right. So, I'm going to ask you the question before. What do you think is the third area of secret to healthy aging? Now it's getting really hard, that third area. It is Gene science, right? Now this is kind of a tough one, and it took us a while to get into it. Because what we know about genetics is you get some of your genes from your mum and some from your dad, right? There's this special thing called recombination that happens when the egg and the sperm meet, and that becomes you, right? A combination of those two genetic backgrounds. And does it change over the course of your life? No, it's like a book, right? The words are written in the book. It's your special book. What it is really in every cell of your body. Now you've got this unique DNA that's yours. Some from your mum, some from your dad. And so how would you think this impacts the way that you age? Right? Because that DNA code doesn't change. Right? So that is kind of the old paradigm, is that aging is inevitable, we know that, and even there's nothing you can really do, right? If your parents didn't age well, you're probably not going to age well. Now the question is that true? Well, I think since this old paradigm was believed, there have been a lot of changes, right? And we want to talk a little bit about those changes. So this gives me a chance to talk about the innovation process, how we do it at Nu Skin. Are you curious about how we do this? You have kind of two opposing, or not necessarily opposing, but two different forces when it comes to innovation. When it comes to deciding what product we're going to bring you, next year or the year after, right? How do we decide what product to work on, what area to work on? Well, if it's the marketers, they're saying, okay, what's really hot right now? Oh, we've got this big generation called the millennials that are moving up, and they've got all the money, and they're really interested in sports nutrition or something, whatever it might be, right? So marketers really focus on market trends, what's really popular, what's hot right now, and you probably are too, right? You see some other company selling something like hotcakes, and you go, why don't we do that, right? And the answer is we can't always do that and compete, right? Where we live at Nu Skin is not doing Me Too products. It's doing products that are special, that are unique, that are demonstrable, right? That have a unique science that people are willing to pay a little more for, but they're going to really work, right? We don't just copy other companies, we can't sort of live in that space. But that's kind of where you tend to go if you only follow market forces. So don't worry if we don't have every product that Amway has, right? Or every product that Alda has, or whatever it is that they sell, right? Because we focus in on social innovation. Now, the other side from marketing is the scientists. How do we work? Well, as John mentioned, we have 75 scientists in the company. They all have different jobs. Right? So we have a whole team of scientists that works in the chemistry lab, working on the quality of the ingredients and investigating everything. The purity and the potency of every product, even our G3 juice, right? How much carotenoids is in there, and are there any impurities in there? We check it all, right? So there's a bunch of scientists that do that. But we have this elite group in product development. Those are the PhDs. We have about 35 of those. We have an innovation center in Shanghai and in Provo. And this team are all specialists in their own areas, right? I told you already, my area is immunology. But we have people that are experts in free radical biology, in sports nutrition, in nutrition itself, right? And all these different areas. We even have some scientists that have made spectrophotometers of things and helped us with the biophotonic scanner. So think of us as little spiders in a web like this. We're sitting in a web and we have our special interests. I'm always scanning the literature for areas of cell biology. Others are always scanning the literature for areas of, particular areas of skin, or their favorite skin cell, a fibroblast or something, right? So here we are sitting in this web here, and a fly comes along and lands in the web, a disturbance in the web, right? Something new, some new piece of information that we find probably first in the industry sometimes, right? And that's what happened. We started to see some new science in the area of genetics. Now there was plenty of science that was starting to rumble through. There was this whole new science called nutrigenomics, and we became interested in that. Interesting. That whole thing is about, your DNA. Since Adam and Eve, things have changed a lot, and there have been a lot of what you call sort of imperfections or nicks in the DNA. So they've found about 1 million what they call single nucleotide polymorphisms, meaning that the code, GATC, one of them, like maybe the G, has been replaced with a C. So that code on there, which which codes for a particular amino acid has shifted and changed. Maybe it doesn't, there's some redundancy in the code, so maybe it's still coding for the same amino acid, or maybe it shifts and it's a different amino acid. And if the amino acid changes the way that the protein folds in the long run, then that may affect your nutritional needs. It makes you unique. For example, one called MTHFR. About a third of sort of white women of sort of Irish extraction have the MTHFR SNP, which means that they need more folic acid in their diet than normal, right? So there's all sorts of things. So these things started to arise. I thought, this area is starting to heat up. This part of the web is starting to get interesting. And then we found a paper by some scientists, published by Richard Weindrich and Thomas Proller, that really piqued our interest. And I'm going to talk more about that later, right? But it led to a new thought, right? That it's, sure, aging is not inevitable. I mean, that there's an expression of age-related genes that can be influenced into a more youthful state. Right, that may not mean much to you right now, but I'll explain it a little bit to help you to understand how we got there, right? First of all, what is gene expression? Because it's talking about that, expression of age-related genes. Well, remember I said that every cell has a nucleus, and in the nucleus is DNA, and it's a book that doesn't change. But in order to get gene products, like maybe the endogenous antioxidant or something else, there needs to be a very clear expression, a clear translation. An example is, I was in Japan before I came here, and they had the New Skin Live event. They had about 5,000 distributors in Tokyo. It was a really fun event, and of course nobody there understood a lick of English, and I was giving them a talk about science. So my favorite translator, Suguru-san, was there translating. It was a 40-minute talk, and as the talk went on, he started to get a little bit tired, I think, and he started to make some mistakes in the translation, just minor mistakes. But it would impact the way that those 5,000 people understood what I was saying, right? Because he was getting tired. It was kind of like an age-related sort of lack of perfect translation. And it turns out that we did learn some things from Weindrich and Proller. We have a picture of them here somewhere. There they are, okay? So let me tell you what we learned from these guys, and then I'm going to expand on it and give you the backstory, okay? We learned from Weindrich. Weindrich is a gerontologist. Anyone know what that is? Gerontologist. Oh, bless you. These are people that study aging, right? Most gerontologists, all they do is tell you what's going to happen as you age. Let me tell you what's going to happen as you age. Maybe your hair will go grey, maybe you'll start to lose your eyesight, maybe you'll start to go deaf. We can even explain why that's happening, right? But most of them do not believe that you can change the course of aging, right? We're just going to tell you why you stop being able to hear well. Is that what you want to know? Do you just want to know why I'm incontinent now? I don't know, it depends. All right, so the reason why this guy was different, he had a whole different background, which I'll describe later. He believed that you can change the course of aging. You can slow the aging process. I'll share with you later about those experiments. Right? Along came this guy. This guy, Thomas Proller, is a geneticist. Okay, his expert is in genetics and in this thing called the gene chip, which is a marvelous technology that allows you to measure gene expression. So now think of my friend Suguru, right? My translator. It's like a device that says, oh, you made a mistake. Oh, you made another mistake, right? So it's an ability to measure gene expression, right? And whether or not it's going really well or not so well, if it's high expression or low expression, right? So, together then, they showed that gene expression does change as you age. All right, so remember, Weindrich said you can slow the path of aging. There are things that you can do. I'll share with you in a minute. You can slow the path of aging. You don't have to take it for granted. Weindrich says you can measure aging at the genetic level. And the third thing that they taught us was that you can change gene expression back to the more youthful state. Meaning, I give Suguru a kind of a wake-up pill, and he's translating accurately. Right? Those are some really cool things to learn, because now there's a platform where we can use genetics to help with the aging process. I hope I don't go too long tonight, but this is kind of fun. Okay, so here's kind of an example of how we do it, right? If you can measure aging at the genetic level, then you can screen for ingredients that might change things back. And we decided to start off simply. Remember I said if you get to the source of aging, the science of beauty, you're sort of really going to the science and the source, not just covering it up. All right? It's science, it's not spackle. Right? Like if you want your face to be beautiful, you don't just cover up the blemishes. Maybe you need to get to the source of, how to keep your skin young, right? That's where the science is. So here, we looked at, as you age, you start to lose your energy levels. Right? It's just well known. It's because the mitochondria, the part of the cell that produces energy, becomes less efficient. So we looked at, okay, how many genes are involved in building the mitochondria and maintaining them? There are 1,000 genes. Of those genes, we wanted to examine those 1,000 genes and see which ones are changing as you age. So that's where Weinrich and Kroller helped us. And they found that 52 genes change with aging. So if you count all these columns, all these rows, there's 52 of them. And you see in the young gene expression of the mitochondria, these genes are expressed at a very low level and these at a high level. Then that's the difference. Once you're old, those ones that were low are now high and vice versa, right? So there's a nice map. You don't have to understand it, but just know we can measure. We can see that there's a change in gene expression related to the mitochondria. What's the next step? If you're a scientist and you have this information, what do you want to do? What's your goal?
To reset.
Yeah, you want to feed these old guys, you want to feed old mice nutritional elements and see if after 3 months of feeding, you can get it to look like young again. So we did that. We screened about 50 ingredients. And this is where, Weinrich is the gerontologist, Kroller is the geneticist. New Skin PhDs are experts in anti-aging type ingredients. So we had already a catalog of ingredients, and we knew exactly which ingredient, which chemical structure from nature, and also the right concentration, the right dose, right? And so that's what we did. We put that to work, and it took a lot of time and a lot of screening. But we did find some that worked. Can you see one? Yeah, behind door number 4. Look at that. 3 months of feeding old mice, and you see a change like this. Now, don't get worried about mice. Do you know that mice have like a 99% sort of correlation in DNA that we do, right? They're very, very similar genetically, right? And we had lots of programs in place to make sure that this is really robust even for humans. So this is spectacular. And this gave birth, this science actually gave birth to our first product. I forgot. Looks like some of the slides that I took out are still there. I'll have to fix that tomorrow. We produced H-log R squared. That's where the science of this product comes from. Right? Did you know that already? All right, good. All right, next. Okay, this is another slide that took there. All right, I want to talk about the backstory of Weinrich and why he believed that you could slow the aging process. And it's quite simple, really. He discovered the work of some scientists back in 1935 by the name of Mackay, worked in New York, and that guy said, I guess he had too much time on his hands. What would happen if I gave rats a diet with about 1/3 less calories? But he didn't want to break rule number 1, which is, rule number 1 of healthy aging is good nutrition, right? So that's micronutrition. That's making sure you get all the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and stuff, right? So he made sure that they got 100% of the daily value of that micronutrients, but lowered the calories. And he discovered that the rats would live about 50% longer. They were hungry. I don't think they liked their life very much, but they lived longer. And we've learned later now that it changed their gene expression, their epigenetics, and it put them into this sort of survival mode and made them live longer, and they were more healthy, right? An extraordinary discovery, and scientists were really scratching their heads going, what's going on? But they repeated it in worms, and flies, and yeast, and mice, and Weinrich said, well, we haven't done it on primates yet, primates being human beings. Well, what human being wants to be put in a cage and given less food, right? So, didn't do that. Monkeys. He's been doing experiments with monkeys, really long experiments, and found basically the same thing. So here's the curve that you see. Over time, what we're looking at is that red line, and you see that the average lifespan and the maximum lifespan of these monkeys increased with this very strict nutritional regimen. All right, so what's the next step? Let's find out if there's a change in gene expression associated with that, right? This is really stage 2. Okay, so here's the gene expression pattern of typical aging, right? And you know how to read a heat map now, right? So you see that these are being expressed at higher levels, these at low levels, right? And then those, now we're measuring gene expression, those individuals that were on this very strong nutritional regimen had this gene expression pattern. Now, I guess the question I would ask you is, having discovered that, how would you put a business plan into action? You've discovered that a strict nutritional regimen, basically involving less calories, but enough nutrients, will help you to be more healthy, live a healthier lifespan. Be like Frank, right? How are you going to commercialize that? I've got an idea. We come to our friends and we say, hey, I've got a great strategy to help you live longer. All you need to do is give me your money and your food. I'll take away your food, you give me your money for that. You pay me to take away your food and to call you up every day and make sure you're not eating too much. What do you reckon? Could we make a multi-level business out of that? I'm not getting much excitement here. Okay, I guess I better stick to the science, huh? Okay, but what about if you could have a gene expression change that sort of mimics that helps you to be on this path to health without having to sort of have this ridiculous diet, right? Because it's all about this gene expression pattern. So that's what we were trying to do. Let's screen for ingredients and combinations of ingredients that can give us this healthy aging pattern, right? And so that's what we did. We tested those 50 ingredients again in this new model. We tested them again and again to make sure that they're right. Do you know how much a gene chip costs? That little gene chip? $500. And you have to do multiple experiments with that gene chip, with those different gene chips, right? A new gene chip every time you do an experiment. And you have to do the experiments in triplicate. Turns out we did it in octuplicate, right? 8 experiments at a time. And we looked at different tissues, the heart, the brain, the muscle, right? So this took 6 years. 6 years and millions of dollars. We finally found ingredients that work really well, and we prioritized them. We said, okay, we choose the top several ingredients, combine those, and then repeated those same experiments again. Right? You want to see the result and whether or not we're able to achieve our goal? Yeah. What are we trying to look like? This or this? Do you want to age typically, or do you want to age in an extraordinary fashion? That's what we found when we put that age ladder into work. Isn't that amazing? That's exactly what we said. Whoa! And then we thought, man, did we make a mistake? This is too good to believe. So we thought we better get a second opinion here. Because I don't know if you know how complex this is. Every gene chip generates 40,000 data points. And you remember you said we're doing it in octuplicate, and we're testing all the different tissues. And so the kind of statistician that has to work all this out and see if it's statistically significant is a very special kind. They use computer algorithms. It's a whole discipline called bioinformatics. And we thought, well, maybe it's easy for them to sort of do it wrong. Right? Maybe you got it wrong. We're not experts. We asked the bioinformaticist, and this is what he told us. So we got a second opinion. We sent all the raw data to Europe to this specialist in biology and bioinformatics. And he had a different way of looking at it. He did what's called a principal component analysis. That way, he didn't do heat maps like this, but he did sort of a 3-dimensional space, right? So in 3-dimensional space, when you pull out those principal components and you're looking at the differences, this is what he found. This is what young looks like. This is what old looks like. It's different, right? So typical aging versus young. Now, what does it look like when you're on that strict nutritional regimen, this like really healthy aging paradigm? It looks like this. Okay, it's a different pattern of gene expression. So we were trying to mimic the green, right? You want to see how we did under this second opinion? The clicker seems to be broken. I don't think it's going to work. Really? You want to see it? Okay. There it is. So if we draw a sphere around those, we can see that we were very close to this pattern of gene expression, right? Much as the heat map said. So that's where that comes from. You always wondered where Y-span came from, right? That is the science behind Y-span. How much overtime have I gone? I've still got time. All right. So I didn't want to go through all of the clinical studies. Just this last one. What we usually do then is we say, okay, the gene expression changed, it was beautiful. We got a second opinion on it, it worked. Does it actually have an impact on us? Well, the best way to study that would be to get a bunch of humans and try it and let them live out their life. And we'll get back to you in about 30 or 40 years and let you know if it's working. That's not going to work either, right? But there are other ways. You can use models in science. So we've been studying the brain. We have a study that's almost ready to publish. We've been studying stress on the skin. The skin is a great model because it's a really good model of aging, right? And so here's one that we did. We took the product, we took the ingredients to our favorite dermatologist and said, test this out, feed these people for 3 months and see if you can see a difference in the skin, right? It's a model of aging. And this is what we found from the dermatologist's assessment, right? In radiance and texture and overall appearance, we saw a statistically significant shift in improvement there, which the dermatologist said is amazing because normally you only see these kinds of changes in those characteristics in topical creams, but we actually saw it in an internal treatment. So this is kind of like our image HNS on steroids, isn't it? Based on gene expression science. You don't need image HNS anymore, right? You've got this. There's also another machine, it's an instrument that measures objectively elasticity in the skin, right? Like if you squeeze the skin on the back of your hand, pinch it like this for a little while, and then let go and watch your skin. If it bounces back really quickly, it means your skin is probably young. If you can still see a line like I can after this amount of time, it's a little older, right? So elasticity is important. So having an improvement in elasticity is like also an improvement in aging, right? So watch the numbers from 32 up to 41.4. Nice. Okay, so we saw some nice changes there. All right, so while we're on the subject of, I told you that we were going to talk about nutrition. 3 secrets to healthy aging. I've shared that with you. I shared with you how we do our innovation at New Skin, right? The difference between marketing and how product development does it. Did you enjoy that? Yeah. All right, let's shift a little bit now to the skin side. And I mentioned to you that we have actives, right? We choose actives in our formulations that are wonderful, and these are anti-aging ingredients. It is the science of beauty. I'm not going to talk much about those ingredients and that part of the science of beauty. I want to talk about the second prong that we've discovered in the area of technology that also you can use to help in terms of getting to the sources of aging with your skin, right? And so, the innovation process so far, here's an area that caught our eye a few years ago, right? Let me tell you some history there. Luigi Galvani, should I say. Giovanni Galvani would be better, right? Luigi Galvani, Italian guy who discovered the galvanic current in 1791. Right? This is an interesting area. In the mid-1700s, they were just starting to discover, oh, we have some people on stage. Hello. Welcome to the stage. Welcome to my stage. I'm being invaded. I'm going to stand on this side. So while I talk about the background of this science, we're going to have Tracy and Alice demonstrate the modern application of this cool science that we've been talking about. All right, so you guys get started. Do you mind if I just keep talking? Yes. All right. So at that time, people became intensely interested in the role of electricity and animation, or life, right? Before this time, they did not know that human beings actually generate electricity as part of our life. Did you know that? Don't worry too much about what they're doing. Still listen to me, okay? All right?
We're doing some sacred girl stuff.
Okay. Look at this. He's videoing the girls. I don't know. This guy looks like a stalker, doesn't he? All right. So, this Galvani guy was sort of doing these weird experiments, and while he was dissecting frog legs, his assistant accidentally sort of touched one of the scalpels that had static electricity built up on it. And what happened to the frog leg? It twitched, and they were like, whoa, what's going on? And so they started to pursue that line of experimentation and found that yes, these nerves actually run on electricity. Guess who else got wind of these experiments at that time? This girl by the name of Mary Shelley. Right? Have you heard of her? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Yeah, her family actually knew, the Galvani family knew these experiments that were going on. One of the guys that was his assistant, I think, later started to use electricity in these bizarre experiments where he would like give them dead bodies a jolt of electricity and they would sit up, or one of their eyes would open. So, you know, people were kind of freaking out about the middle of the 1700s for these kinds of experiments, right? That's not the kind of work we're doing here. But suffice to say, you know, it's really interesting how it works. Cells actually do have membranes, and in those membranes they use electricity as part of the bioenergetic process, right? Those membranes are selectively permeable, so there are some ions that are able to concentrate on some side, and that gives them a resting electronic potential, right? And then those potentials can be used to generate ATP, but also to send a pulse of electricity down a nerve so that there's muscle contraction. How interesting is that, right? So these cells actually can be influenced by very small electronic potential, right? By galvanic electricity. So they're moving liquids in the cells. We're not talking about a lot of electricity. I don't hear much sparking and I don't smell any burning flesh here. It's about 50, sort of around the range of 50 millivolts, so it doesn't take very much. But a resting cell can generate a resting potential of about 50 millivolts. So it's such an interesting area. So interesting that, you know, there are a lot of sort of treatments that can be used in the medical field, but for skin, it can be used, right? So they had, I don't know if you've ever seen one in one of these estheticians, what do you call them, studios, but there are devices that are galvanic that they use on faces. I met an esthetician in California one time that said, yes, I had one of these machines. It cost $60,000. We had to be trained to use it, and you would have to calibrate the device to everyone's skin, because everyone's skin sort of conducts electricity at different rates. So you calibrate it properly, and then you see amazing effects on the skin. Fine lines of wrinkles and hydration and brightness. Well, something disruptive happened, and we discovered it. Our scientists sitting in the spiderweb discovered a person who had found to print a little circuit board that was able to do that complete calibration without any training. It just self-calibrated. So that's what this does. This device was the first one invented that actually is able to conduct electricity into skin, do a self-calibration, and actually do what those great big devices did. So isn't it amazing that an esthetician that I knew left his $60,000 machine and started to use the galvanic spark in his business? Right? It works that well. So what we're doing here is the half-face demonstration, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit more?
So we've started off with a prep gel, and the first step is to open the pores, soften the skin, and prepare the skin for cleansing and prepare it for the age-lock gel that I'm going to use in a minute. So it's very important to use that first, and Alice's skin already feels really soft and smooth. But what we're going to do next with the age-lock gel is the age-lock gel is actually going to eliminate the age-lock ingredients, and the galvanic spark actually helps to absorb the ingredients 5 times as much, really effectively into the skin, and it will increase cellular energy, and the skin will look softer, smoother, more youthful, and firmer. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Remember, I don't know if you played with magnets as a kid, but if you get the North Pole and the North Pole together, what happens? You try to touch them, what happens?
They repel.
They repel each other, right? But if you turn it around and you go south with north, what happens?
Attract.
Right? They stick, right? Don't play with those neodymium magnets. Those you can't even pull apart, right? So we use the same kind of principle here. Molecules that we're using that are actives also have a charge a lot of the time. Things like hyaluronic acid, they have a charge. And so if you have the right polarity, let's say you have a negative and there's a negative charge on the molecule, you can push it into the skin. And then if you, let's say it's a cleansing molecule, push it into the skin, now you change the polarity and you pull out that cleansing molecule with whatever dirt or stuff that it has attracted. So we're using this polarity also to help cleanse the skin, right? And also to push in, like we said, those active ingredients. You'll notice also that the head kind of looks like a car tire. Our devices team spent a lot of time designing that to make sure that it pushes the gels around just the right amount and provides the right kind of contact for the galvanic treatment.
How does it feel, Alice?
Okay, so let me tell you about the half-face demo. We actually, when we created this product, I don't think people really appreciated how it worked. And it sat on the shelf, sat on the shelf, sat on the shelf. I remember having meetings at the executive level where we said, oh, we've got 5,000 left and we just don't seem to be able to sell these galvanic spas. And we were wondering what to do with it. And we were about to seek permission from the controller, the financial controller, to get rid of these. We're going to have to lose millions of dollars, but it's not selling. And then something amazing happened. I can't remember if it started in Korea or Europe. I think it might have been Europe, right? Where one of the distributors had a brilliant idea. He said, let's just do it on half the face. We'll do our customers half face, and we'll have them look in the mirror and see if they can see a difference. And people totally saw the difference. They could see that the face that was done on the galvanic side was so much better. And at that point, we went from having 5,000 left over that we were going to throw away to selling more than 50,000 a month worldwide. It just went crazy. Things have not slowed down since then, right? It's been extremely popular because, again, it's a demonstrable difference, right? This is phase 2.
This is phase 2, and it's good to hold it in certain areas. So,
Tell us about the pattern that you're using.
so the pattern is always, it's upwards, along the cheekbone, and when you, it's always putting more pressure upwards. So when I'm actually going down, it's very gentle, but up is more pressure.
So it's like a hacksaw. You go pressure, left, pressure. Yeah. I had this done to me in the airport at New Zealand about 10 years ago. I'd never used the galvanic spa. We were traveling with a very outgoing new skin distributor. She's one of the very rare outgoing new skin distributors because most of you are very shy, right? And she said, what, Mike, you haven't had a galvanic spa half-face treatment? Let's do it right now while we're waiting. So we actually had this small crowd of people while I was getting my half-face demo. And this distributor, I think, signed up 2 or 3 people at that event. I went running off to the bathroom to rinse off my face, right? And then I look in the mirror and I'm like, I think I can tell the difference. And about 2 hours later, it was even more striking how you could tell the difference.
It feels like it's going to clear up. It's going to be
How many minutes is this total?
This is a 3-minute treatment. It's done. So I'm up because it's time.
Right. Anyone see the difference? She's done too many selfies.
Compared to each side, how does it feel? I feel fresh. You look fresh.
Nice. Nice. All right, well, we've got a couple more things to talk about in this area. So this is one area, right, where we're using actives and we're using technology to sort of increase your chances of getting to the sources of aging. Isn't that great? All right, so let's talk about another area of a scientist in a spider web. All right? So here's our scientist in the spider web again. Now this scientist is really interested in skin, one of our skin scientists again, and he noticed a new area. An area where we learn about cells and cell movement. Now we know that physical activity for the whole body is very important, right? Well, some science started to rise that showed that movement with cells is also a very important part of what they do. Cells have like the skeletal structure and all sorts of things that go inside. And And our scientists read and started reading the papers that were published that showed that there was movement, that induced movement on these skin cells. And then they started to produce healthy proteins that help to give you an anti-aging effect on the inside, right? So we're talking about sources of aging. So that's what he discovered. So he took that science and he started to do some experiments showing, okay, there's this like scaffold cell sort of theory. What happens if I move these cells in culture? So, you know, these culture dishes that are growing these cells and scaffolds and moving them. And he started to do experiments about, you know, what kind of frequency of movement, how much movement is important, what frequency, how fast should the movement go, and what kind of movement. Should you squish the cells, or should you give them a sort of an oscillation? What works? You know, like squeezing the cell like a Thai massage, or is it sort of, oh, right? So, in all of these experiments that he did, ultimately then, okay, it's not moving, is it? Unless I have like 10 slides that are identical. Here we go. Okay. So he started to work these out. I don't know how he did it, but he had completed 4 proof of principle clinical studies before he even talked to marketing about this. And by the time he did, and I remember when he shared this with the team, it was very exciting. Here's sort of what I was talking about in the cell while we're doing the actual work here on the face, right? So look at all of the skeletal structure under the cell, right? There's collagen, there's elastin, there's all these things under the cell. And when you move the skin, you're moving all of the cells, right? Things are happening. You can see changes in the fluid and proteins that are being produced, right? And this, then in human clinical studies that we did, we showed that we're able to actually make a difference, right? And that's what we're doing on the face right here, right now. So let me tell you about the movement then. The prototype devices, we didn't know exactly how it was going to work, so we built all these different prototypes. Some of them just moved the skin like this, right? We had like a face that had, a device that had fingers that moved up and down. That didn't work so well. We had one that just kind of moved the skin like this, didn't work so well. We found that when we did this counter-rotating head like this, at exactly the right frequency, then we saw movement. The work that we did showed that we actually see improvement. So that's what we see right now, that little clackety-clackety sound. It's a particular frequency, right? It's not a high buzzing, it doesn't move very fast. It's exactly the right frequency of movement, the right oscillation, so that you get the best impact on basically waking up those cells, giving them a massage, so that we see effect.
So it's, I'm doing half the face, but it's 2 minutes.
And you'll notice she's not moving too quickly, right? It's not a scrub.
No,
it's just sort of a gentle movement because the head is doing the work, right?
It just glides. It just glides for you almost.
That's completed. All right. Now, another thing there is that the gel that we use is very important, right? So, so we had to look at, we want to transfer the movement of that head to the skin, right? And we found that we had to study viscosity. Do you know what that is? Like honey is very thick viscosity, but milk is very thin viscosity, right? So that whole science, that area is called rheology, R-H-E-O, rheology. And we found that if the liquid is too thin, then it grips the skin too tightly, right? If the liquid is too thick, too viscous, then it doesn't actually move the skin at all. So the right amount of slip, the right amount of grip is very important. So the gels that we produce, and there are 5 different ones that you can customize to your skin type, but they all have one thing in common, exactly the right rheology. So that the head of the Lumispa is able to move the skin just the right amount. Right? And this is important for your business, right? The science is there, but it's important for your business, right? We're not selling Tupperware here, where you just buy it once and then you don't get any repeat sales, right? You need to continue to buy the gels for your customers. All right, you want to talk more about what's going on?
Yes.
Oh, wait, yes, okay, we've got a new head here.
We do have a new head, the Lumispa accent.
All right.
With Idealize eye cream. Now combined, it will help. This suffers from puffy dark circles sometimes, or gets tired eyes. We'd like to fix a few lines and wrinkles. Everyone's nodding. Love it. Okay, and the eyes. It's
very delicate, yes.
Very delicate. So that's the first area of the face that will tend to show signs of aging, especially in big.
And it's one of the first areas where we look, right? When you talk to someone, you're looking at their eyes. And so this is one part of my job that I love, right? There aren't too many companies where the scientist is allowed out of their cage to talk to our customers. But this company we do, right? And so we got feedback from our customers saying, well, this thing, you know, I really am concerned about my eyes. This is doing wonderful things to my skin, but what about my eyes? This thing won't fit in that orbital socket, right? So that's when we thought, oh, we need to do something about that. We need to get that same kind of action, but in a softer head, right? Which if you ever feel this head, it's very soft and just the right shape so that it's able to transfer that energy to those delicate areas of the eye. So we're doing this part here and this part here, but we're not actually going into the center there, right? Don't go into that corner, just here and here. And that's really going to take off, I think, right? Because it's really an important area.
It's helping the product absorb. It's so relaxing. It's really relaxed when they use this small one.
Just the sound is starting to make me sleepy.
Are you relaxed now?
Okay, well, while we're finishing this, is it done? All right, how's it feel? She's had a complete makeover today. Quick, someone hold her up before she falls off the chair. Oh, great. Well, thanks for doing those demonstrations. It shows how easy it is. Good question.
It is, you go out towards the outside, because that is, it's a very great projection. Outside, then you go over the top, but always go upwards. You can focus on this area here as well. Depends on where your problem is. Yes. Yes, underneath, just I go three stripes up. So start at the top, go 1, 2, 3, and then you go over everything.
Kind of like painting a wall, huh?
Yeah, not too close to the eye. It's really important to go about half a centimetre away from the eye and shell. Yes.
Yeah, if you want to take care of the eyeball and the vision, you need to take eye formula. All right. So my time's running out, so we just need to finish up here to let the next speaker go, right? Because I think I'm 5 minutes over. I don't know. You'll have to. Why don't you? Ask it. Oh, when you change it. Yes, I see. I think it goes from starts to glow bright red when it's done, when it's too old. Yeah. Just kidding. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but we do. Yeah, it's like a toothbrush. You do need to replace it. We do. Yeah, that is a question that I think one of our support staff can help you with. I don't know the answer to that. Even though John said I was an expert in all areas, I don't know all the answers. So just to summarize then, we have 7 clinical studies on these. And remember I mentioned we have 5 different treatment cleansers that you can sort of customize or personalize to your own skin type, and the different changeable heads there, right, that also have to do with it. Right, so let's go to, can we go to the, because I've already covered these things, let's go to the last slide, or the second last slide. Yesterday I cut out a bunch of slides and somehow they ended up back in there. The fairies came and put them back in. Last slide. All right, well, I'll just summarize for you. Okay, we talked about the purpose of our whole product development process, and the products that we create for you, right, is to help us to age well. It's the science of beauty. It's beauty inside as well as outside. You got that, right? Then I gave you 3 secrets to healthy aging from the inside, right? Nutrition, antioxidant science, gene expression science. And then I demonstrated for you how we actually put that into practice, especially on the gene expression science. A lot of work, right? Really good science that I don't see anyone else really being able to compete with. Then we talked about how we are using devices to enhance the active ingredients that we've already studied and have really good science on, right? And gave you demonstrations on the galvanic spa and also on the Lumi spa, right? So hopefully that was a really good insight for you about how we do product development. I hope you walk away from this with a huge amount of confidence that our science is real, that the products that we have are not only to help you with a good business, but to change lives. Thanks so much, everyone.